Clear prop.
Service 73, Cherokee number 2, following twin traffic, 3 mile final, clear Pleasantville. 1 Charlie Bravo, exit in runway 25, going 4 mile final.
This is Behind the Prop with United Flight Systems owner and licensed pilot Bobby Doss and his co-host, Major Airline Captain and designated pilot examiner Wally Mulhern. Now let's go Behind the Prop.
What's up, Wally?
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
Fantastic, as always. This week, something that we get asked a lot about that we don't really talk too much about, but this week is all about mission-oriented time building. A lot of people have asked us questions on the internet and via social media about, what are some smart ways to build time? I think a lot of people are hoping there's these magical freeways out there, Wally, that we could build time and save money, but better than splitting the cost. There's not many good options out there, but we're going to give you some ideas to make it maybe a little less boring, a little less monotonous, and talk about some ways to build some time with some mission-based ideas. What do you want to start off with today, Wally?
Well, what I want to start off with is probably 30 years ago, the airlines started a new trend in their training. They came up with a phrase called line-oriented flight training, and we referred to it as LOFT, L-O-F-T, line-oriented flight training. And basically what it means is rather than for a simulator session, rather than just go in and say, let's see, I think we'll work out of Houston today, and we're going to go up and we're going to do some stalls, and we're going to do 3 or 4 approaches, and we're going to do some engine out work. The airline started trying to make it to where it was actually mimicked a real flight. In other words, okay, today we're going to fly from Houston to Atlanta, and in between Houston and Atlanta we're going to have some emergencies. And we're going to treat it as if it were a real flight. In other words, we're going to get in the simulator, and we're going to have a time that we want to be off the gate. We want to try to simulate the rhythm of a real live flight. So the airlines have taken it, and again, it started 25 years ago or so, and it has trickled down into general aviation training to an extent where we have a phrase called scenario-based flight training. I would venture to say I think everybody is familiar with what scenario-based flight training is. I'm not quite sure how many people actually do it. And what I see in my check rides is a conservative approach from the applicant as far as whether we're even going to get in the airplane and fly. And it is so conservative that I don't really believe it's realistic. It's not realistic for the real world. And I say that because why are we learning to fly? I would say 95% of the people who are learning to fly have a mission in mind. Now, that mission may be going to work for the airlines. It may be, just to be a professional pilot. It may be to better connect with the grandkids who live in Alabama. Very few people just come in to fly and say, man, I just like getting in an airplane and going and doing touch and goes. I can remember a gentleman when I was learning to fly many, many years ago that was like that. His wife had passed away, and he bought an airplane, and he just came out about 5 days a week and did touch and goes. He never really left the pattern. Mr. Mayo was his name. A sweet, sweet old guy. Everybody at the airport loved Mr. Mayo. But he was the exception. Most of us are learning to fly for a reason, and it's from flying an airplane or getting from point A to point B. So what I see with applicants with the higher level ratings, when I say that, I'm talking about instrument and commercial, not private. But I'll go through their logbook and I will see nothing that they haven't really ever flown a mission. All they've done is flight training.
They had to have done their instrument long cross country with 3 approaches to 3 different airports, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I a lot of times with private pilot people, when they get their check right, I'll say, well, now what? And one answer, and I cringe when I get this answer, and I get it a lot, is I'm starting instrument training tomorrow. And I say, no, don't do that. Just go fly. Get in the airplane, go places. Fly missions.
You know how many people get their private here, and I see them in the hallway 4 or 5 days later, and I'll say, have you flown alone yet? No, I haven't. And they begged me to let them solo for weeks and weeks, and in a little bit worse winds than I wanted to, and they don't go fly once they get that private. I say, have you taken up a friend yet? No, I haven't done that yet. And I think there's this anxiety of that seems a little scary, right? Like there's this level of, I don't know, seriousness that happens with that next flight.
Yeah. What I find ironic is that the applicant wants me to certify them to fly people, but they won't fly people. I remember the day I got my private pilot certificate. I lived in Monroe, Louisiana. I had to fly over to Shreveport, which is about 80 miles, 90 miles or so, for my check ride. And I can remember the flying home, just thinking of all the people I wanted to take for an airplane ride. And I mean, first on my list were my parents. And I got in about 5 o'clock, and it was summertime, so it was light, very late. And I remember driving home. I only lived 10 minutes from the airport, and said to my parents, let's go back to the airport. Let's go for an airplane ride. And I took my parents for an airplane ride. I wanted to take my sister. I wanted to take all my friends, and I did. I just was excited about doing that. But I'm going to use a sports analogy. In sports, but let's take baseball. A major league pitcher goes down with an injury, not a major injury, but say a sore arm or whatever. Typically, what happens is they'll say so and so is on the injured list, and they're out for a while. He's going to be out for 30 days. Well, while they're nursing the injury or rehabbing the injury, as a sports fan, you'll get updates. They'll say, yeah, he threw a simulated game yesterday. But before he actually goes into the big leagues to pitch a real game, most of the time the major league team will send that player down to one of their minor league teams, and they'll start a game or two down with a minor league team. And that's to put some game stress on them. And I think it's so important for us to have some game stress on us as a pilot. In other words, I go back to my private pilot time building times. And I can remember getting a call from a friend of mine one time. He said his girlfriend's grandfather was he had hours to live. They expected him to pass away within a day, and she lived up in Little Rock, and he wanted to know if I could fly her up to Little Rock so she could say goodbye to her grandfather. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And so the three of us went, and that afternoon we got in the airplane. I flew her up to Little Rock. Of course, the weather was good and all that kind of stuff. At the time, I did not have an instrument rating. I do remember coming home and losing a vacuum pump on the way home. That was my first experience what it was to lose a vacuum pump. But it was a mission. It was kind of, geez, she really needs to get there. So was there a little stress on me, more so than just going up and flying around and, around the city and coming back in? Yeah, absolutely there was. And I think that's something that we need to put ourselves under that stress, to an extent, in our flying career, because right now we have something going on with everything going on in Afghanistan, and the federal government just activated the Civil Reserve Air Fleet, where civilian airliners are going over to Afghanistan. Well, not quite to Afghanistan, but they're evacuating people out of Afghanistan. Americans out of Afghanistan. And it's a big deal. It's a mission. And that's ultimately where most of the people that we're talking about training, want to be at some point. They want to be, whether it be the airlines or a corporate job or something, you're going to be at some point where you are flying for a mission.
Yeah, no question. And again, around here, you're probably right. Somewhere in that 95% range, people, there's a few hobbyists, but the majority of the people that are training here want to become professional pilots. And I think it's interesting that there is a level of conservativeness, which I greatly appreciate around here, about weather and temperatures and all dew points and all this stuff that does drive good pilot behavior. But there is a sense that we ultimately are going to be asked to go, right? I have a feeling that in the planes you fly on a daily basis, you're probably going to go just about no matter what. There would have to be, I'm assuming, a tornado within a few miles, some serious bad convective weather, or you're going to go. And you're probably not going to go until it passes, but you're still going to go, right? Your job is to get a few hundred people somewhere.
I'll just give you an example. This happened to me last week, I believe. We were pushing back out of Chicago to go to Orlando, and we went to start the first engine, and the engine, we got no rotation in the flight deck, and the ground guy started screaming at me, literally screaming at me, fire, fire, fire. And we discontinued the start, and I confirmed with him that he said engine fire, because now we're talking about an evacuation on a busy ramp at Chicago O'Hare. And he alluded to us that the fire had stopped, and I said, so you see flames? And he said, no, it wasn't flames. There were sparks. There were sparks coming out of the engine. I said, okay. All right, so we coordinated with the flight attendants to look out the window to see if they saw any flames. So we're talking to the ramp control people to see if they saw any flames. And lo and behold, we had sheared a shaft on our starter. And we went back into the gate. They pulled us back into the gate. By the time they even got a jetway on, our maintenance people had the engine uncowled. By the time the jetway got there, a maintenance guy came on and he said, we've removed the starter. We have one at the hangar. It'll be a 40-minute fix. And I was shocked, because usually in mechanic talk, 40 minutes really means 2 hours.
Yep.
But in 36 minutes, he was back on the flight deck saying, you're ready to go. It should take us about 2 minutes to complete the paperwork, and then you're ready to go to Orlando. So, yeah, we completed the flight. So that was our mission, to take that, 180 people or however many people were in the back of the airplane to Orlando, and we did that. That's a day in the life of an airline pilot. I can't tell you the last time one of my flights just flat out canceled. Now, there have been times where maybe I didn't fly it because of duty time limitations, but the flight went out a couple hours late maybe with another crew. But, yeah, the airplane's going to go.
And similarly this morning at this flight school, gentleman had planned and was going to do his long commercial cross country. It's a whole day event for most commercial pilots, students that are working on this. Goes out, plane wouldn't start. He was ready to call it a day. I'm like, well, we got another battery, I'm sure, because charging it was not going to be the best option for him. I think he was surprised that I was willing to put a brand new battery in it to keep his mission alive. But we changed the battery in about 20 minutes. The mechanic changed the battery, and lo and behold, he turned on the master switch. Everything worked. He started the plane, and he's probably halfway to Arkansas right now.
Yeah.
And that is, I think that's part of it, that we have to understand the systems. We have to know and then repair some things. But there's also this level of, as you mentioned, the mission of creating a little bit of anxiety, right? I could see on his face he wasn't too crazy about trying to charge that and go, which was my first indication of let's just replace the battery and make the person feel real confident. But at the same time, there's occasions where we might have to do some fixing, band-aiding, get approval from the FAA in some worst-case scenarios to fly things, and get them back home. That's what a professional pilot does, isn't it, Wally?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a time where actually with this flight school, I was doing an instrument check ride with a gentleman, and we had an indication of high EGT in one of the engines, and we were 95% sure it was an indication problem. We ended up landing in Navasota, and your guys came over in another airplane that was similar. And I asked the guy, I said, "Are you comfortable in this airplane?" He said, "Yeah, I've flown it all the time." I said, "Well, let's just finish in this airplane." And we started in one airplane, we finished in another airplane, finished the check ride, finished the mission. And of course it was an indication problem, but they fixed it over there and landed back here just about 10 minutes after we did. There are many things that you can do to create yourself little missions. It's just, as simple as going to another airport for a meal. If you're going to go up to Lufkin and have a burger at the cafe up there, and you know that the restaurant closes at 1, you create a little bit of stress, knowing that, gee, I need to get there before 1 to get my hamburger.
And you're not indicating we should leave at 12:50 and try and race over there.
No.
You're indicating plan the day.
Right.
I want to leave at 11. I need to be wheels up by 11:15. If I'm not going to get to enjoy my lunch. So you have to plan ahead. You have to create that line-like experience that you do in the airlines to say, okay, there's times, and if I'm not quite on time, it's going to cause problems.
Right.
What you talked about earlier about mission-based, us doing mission-based items and scenario-based training. The thing that I think about from scenarios-based training, and it is good. It's better than not having scenarios, but they're all fake. In 99% of the time, scenarios are fake. The CFI would say, okay, I pulled your power. You have an engine that's going out. There's really not the same level of stress at all. Maybe when you're a brand new private, you have that level of stress. But you have the ability to push that back in.
Yeah.
I had a CFI one time reached over and flipped the master off. I think that's the most scared I've ever been because real stuff happened, right? Things went off. I thought the engine would die. I was a new private, but he was trying to show me that, look, everything's going to be okay while we were screaming for a few minutes. But those are all fake. And I can divert all day. I can pretend there's bad weather in front of me. But I do think the key to what we're trying to talk about right now is how do we create real missions with real decision making to make you, all of you listeners, better pilots, whether you're a private student today, a private pilot, or maybe even a commercial pilot who's trying to make something happen and be accomplished. I made some plans to go to Austin to pick up my daughter in the coming weeks. And I asked an ATP who hasn't flown in a long time if they wanted to join me. And I bet they think it's a big mission. They're going to flight plan. They've never been to that airport. They've probably never flown this particular aircraft, which means they have to know some systems and airspeeds. And, an ATP is going to treat it very mission-based.
Right.
Whereas I think if I were just to ask an instrument student, they would ask me, am I your safety pilot or do I get to fly? And they would just come up and be ready to go. Not indicting them. I'm just saying it's a very different approach. And my CFI, when I was working on my commercial, said, act like a commercial pilot. Let's fly like a commercial pilot. And I think that's always stuck with me. So we've created a list of some mission ideas that we'll talk through and give you some ideas on how to make these missions real for you. And hopefully you'll take on our challenges and go fly some of these missions. As Wally said, the easiest one is to plan a lunch or a dinner, the $100 hamburger ride. Hopefully we all are actively doing some of that, helping these restaurants stay open and enjoying the expensive hamburger. One that I think creates more stress than that is asking a friend if you can take them, meaning your friend and their spouse or their significant other, on a date. And the reason that creates a level of anxiety is because it's not just for me. I'm not just going to eat the $100 hamburger. You could make a pretty special couples event by taking a couple down to the beach here. It's probably a 45-minute flight. Give them the crew car, let them go eat dinner. You sit in the lobby like a corporate pilot and wait for their return, pack them back up and bring them home through downtown in the evening haze of Houston, Texas, and make it a pretty romantic evening for them. But what happens there, Wally, if the ceilings are 2,500 feet and I'm a VFR pilot? Does it create some questions for me to think about?
It definitely creates questions, and this is where, when you look over your shoulder for your CFI, he's not there, and that's when you've got to make the decision. Am I making this flight?
You got people's feelings on the line now.
Right.
This guy's created a surprise, or this girl's created a surprise for her boyfriend or spouse.
Right.
She's not going to want it to fall through now. They got flowers at the table down there in Galveston.
Yeah.
At Goidos, one of the nice seafood restaurants down there. What are you going to do? Am I going to cancel that? I paid for those reservations.
Right.
And it does build and build and build. 25 becomes 24, and you start thinking, oh my gosh, it's at the coastline. Depending on the time of year, it could be more moisture down there on the coastline. So it does create stress, and we would never recommend you do anything unsafe. I think the learning here is that you're having to make these decisions, not your CFI making these decisions.
Right.
And that's when you, I think, really become a true pilot. So offer it up to one of your friends, maybe a special night, and take them to dinner and feel the stress maybe of a little bit of weather, a little bit of winds, a little bit of timing. What if your airplane comes back late? Wally, does your on-time arrival, your on-time history, only because of what you're able to control, or are there other factors outside of Wally's control impacting your on-time history?
Oh, there's so many factors. So many factors. I mean, when you start looking at the all the moving parts within an airline, late bags, late customers, late fuel, late catering, late crew,
late plane.
I just the other day I was on a layover in New York, and we have our scheduled pickup time from the hotel, and we're supposed to be picked up at noon for a 1:30 departure, and traffic was horrible, and I'm on the phone saying, hey, we're on our way. We're going to get there as quickly as we can. We got to the airplane about 20 minutes before departure and got out on time, but they were wondering where we were.
Yes, no doubt for sure. What about giving a discovery flight to someone, someone who may be interested in flight? What are your thoughts on a private pilot with 65 total time hours offering up to a friend? Can I take you up and let you see what it's like to be a pilot?
I think that's wonderful. I think that's what we should be doing. Sharing the gift, the love of aviation with other people. I mean, we do it with anything that we do. I mean, every one of us has something that we're passionate about, that we love to do, and we like to share it with other people. You may be a golfer, and you talk to somebody who's never played golf, and you try to show them your passion. But so many of your friends, as a pilot, I mean, when they find out you're a pilot, most people are intrigued by aviation. Most people are. And so when they find out you're a pilot, finding people that want to go for airplane rides is pretty easy. And I think what you'll find is most people have no clue what the process is to become a pilot. They don't think they can do it, and they say, "Well, I can't be a pilot. I wear glasses." Well, look at me. I'm wearing glasses too.
We're both wearing glasses. Yeah. And we had Jessica on the show who only has one eye. She's blind in one eye.
Right.
And she flies for Southwest. So there's all kinds of possibilities. I think that's key, is to share all that.
Yeah.
Now, definitely fly in the seat you've been flying in. Don't change seats and do crazy things. Just take them up, let them fly in the right seat, and let them steer the plane a little bit. It's amazing how far that might go into their future. I know for sure I've taken up 2 people that have now become professional pilots, and they never had been up until I took them up, and that's a small number, but I really feel like I've impacted these 2 people's lives forever.
Yeah.
And I hope that they remember that. Yes, I did do it free, so y'all remember when y'all get real rich that I took y'all up for free. But it is something that will transcend people's lives forever.
Yeah.
And as you just said it, the next mission we'll talk about is going to play golf somewhere remote. I mean, that is a cool thing that not too many people get to do. In a Cessna, you might not be able to take a foursome somewhere, but I could tell you, I could take a buddy of mine, and I've gone to play golf with my dad in Brenham a number of times, which is a cool treat to fly over, get dropped off less than a mile from his golf course, go over and play 18 holes with my dad, jump back in the plane and come home. Something very unique. But take a buddy, take a friend, go fly a couple 100 miles away and play a unique golf course that you don't get to play regularly. It'll be a pretty cool mission. You got to think about weight and balance. You got to think about storing those clubs. You got to think about coming home after a little bit of fatigue, probably, maybe at night. There's more to it than just flying to a destination and turning right back around and coming home.
Right. Another thing that we've talked about is fly to somewhere to do something that is on a time schedule. What do I mean by that? Fly to a concert. Go watch the Astros play the Rangers up in Dallas-Fort Worth. Go to a baseball game up there. You know, it's a 1 p.m. first pitch. It's a hour and a half flight. It's a 30-minute Uber ride or whatever, cab ride or rental car ride to the stadium. You know, build all that in. Say, oh, geez, we need to leave by this time to make it there to the game on time. And, yeah, I mean, you have to look at weather. You have to look at weather for all day because you're going to be coming back after the game, whenever the game is over. Is it going to be over at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock? But it gives you a little bit more pressure because you got to be there for a certain time. Now, yeah, if you're late for the game, is it the end of the world? No, it's not. It's not. But it gives you something to shoot for.
Probably around my 100-hour mark, I decided I was going to take my wife to the casinos, which here's probably a 2.5-hour drive, probably an hour 10 in a Cessna to get over there. And it was our 21st anniversary, and we were going to the Golden Nugget. We went to the original Golden Nugget on our first honeymoon, our only honeymoon. And I was so excited to go, but the ceilings were about 1,200 feet that day. Had to end up canceling the flight because I wasn't instrument rated, and we drove over and drove back, and that's what really drove me to getting my instrument, because that day with the ceiling was 1,200 feet, but it was probably a layer about 200 feet thick. It probably would have been a gorgeous, calm day to fly over there and land and come back. And I was so excited because they assigned me a VIP person. When you call the casino and say, I'm flying my own aircraft over there, can you pick me up from the airport? They set you up with a limo and a VIP rep and all this stuff. Little did they know it was not a Citation Cessna. It was a Cessna 172. But you get a little bit of attention when you say I'm flying my own airplane into a casino. So maybe do an overnight trip like that to a casino. Make the decisions about the weather. You got to know the weather today and tomorrow. Right. You got to plan ahead if you're going to have cocktails and eat and leave early or leave late. You got a lot of different timing scenarios that you have to think about. You probably don't want to keep the plane for 36 hours. You probably want to keep it for less than 24, and you got to put all that into your schedule to make sure you can get back on time and know the weather. So try an overnighter of some sort. Always something that is going to create a little bit more pressure and anxiety than just even $100 hamburger.
Yeah.
One thing I challenge people to do, because it's not impossible, but it sounds, I think when you learn how to fly, it sounds really hard, but I think people should cross the border. And when I say that, I mean between Texas and Louisiana, not into Mexico, but go to Louisiana, go to Arkansas, go somewhere further away. I flew to Mississippi one day in a 182, and I never thought that was possible 5-6 years ago when I first started flying. But it was a pretty enjoyable day trip, 3.5 hours over, 3.5 hours back. And I went to the eastern border of Mississippi, which I just never thought. That's 4 states I crossed. I flew a Warrior back from Bedford, Indiana one time. I ferried a plane. That's real planning. That's 3 fuel stops. That's a long way to go, and you got to be on your A game if you're going to think about nutrition and hydration. And we had about a 20-knot headwind the whole way back, so cars on the freeway were getting ahead of us down below because we were going so slow. But think about a bigger trip where you have to cross a border. It's going to create a million little scenarios and a little bit of missions for you that you have to do. But put that in your list of items to accomplish. Cross a border. What I think that does more than anything is makes you become a little bit more of a fuel expert. On that trip, you're probably going to have to pump your own fuel somewhere.
Yeah.
Self-serve fuel. You're probably going to use full service at some point as well. You're going to have to check the fuel. You're going to have to make sure you got fueled correctly with the right type of fuel. There's all kinds of risks that maybe don't feel natural. At your home airport, you've probably got comfortable with all these procedures.
Yeah.
But at a remote airport, you might not be comfortable. The first time you walk in and you tell the person at the counter that I got fuel in 14902 uniform, and they go, well, I don't have that yet. It's going to delay you. It's going to set you back because she doesn't even have the order rang up yet. It just creates all these things that you've never done before that become part of your new mission routine. I know I'm going to have to get my fuel and pay for my fuel.
Yeah, and the self-serve fuel is a big. It can be a big deal. I know most of the students here at this airport are at flight schools, and all the fuel is full-service fuel. So, at some point in your private pilot training, I would think it would be incumbent on the CFI to take you somewhere and just kind of show you how you do the self-service fuel thing. It's fairly easy once you get it figured out, but can be a little bit intimidating. I certainly wouldn't want somebody to ever forego putting extra fuel on the airplane just because they're not sure how to do it.
That could be disastrous.
Yeah.
I think we challenge people around here all the time to take fuel out of an aircraft. On the same token, I wouldn't want anybody to take off overweight because they were a little concerned about how to get fuel out of an aircraft. If we talk about these scenarios and these missions, but if I'm 60 pounds overweight and I'm only going to be in the air for an hour, there's a real easy answer to that question, whether it be on a check ride, whether it be in real life. The best solution there is to take out 10 gallons of avgas,
right,
and be at or underweight.
Right.
And how do I take 10 gallons out? I'm sure your flight school, I'm sure your FBO has some procedures. But if you've never done it, man, please go do that so that you're not worried about removing fuel if you ever happen to be doing a weight and balance and see that you're overweight. What about planning a flight with multiple stops? And before we started recording, we joked that I always had a goal of trying to get 10 airports in a day, and I have accomplished that. But in Houston, 8 airports is probably a 3-hour flight. You could go from this airport to Pearland to Sugar Land to West Houston to Houston Executive to Brenham to College Station, Coulterfield, Conroe, and back to here, which would be 9 different airports and probably only be a 3-hour flight.
Yeah.
Lots of different experiences. Half of those are towered, half of those are not towered. It would be something to really have to plan out and think about. Many different types of airspace, some Bravo activity in there somewhere, some Deltas, some uncontrolled, Echo Golf. All that stuff would be really fun to challenge yourself with for a mission. And on that, maybe make 2 fuel stops, one self-serve, one full serve, just to practice as well.
Yeah, I know my daughter. We call it the Loop. We're based in Cleveland. That's where airplanes are, and which is northeast corner of Houston. We'll fly south. We'll do a touch and go of Galveston, then head over to Texas Gulf Coast, do a touch and go there up to Sugar Land, and Houston Exec and Hooks and Conroe, and at the time North Houston, which doesn't exist anymore, and back to Cleveland. Yeah, so about six
That's
stops in one flight.
What about some night missions, Wally? We could do the same similar trip where we tried to plan a night trip from our home airport to a towered airport to a non-towered airport to another towered airport. Again, just giving me the ability to manage some operations at night. Maybe it's pilot controlled lighting. Maybe it's talking to a tower. Maybe it's just staying current. maybe gives me a reason to stay current. But I think all those activities would create some opportunity for us to have a mission at night instead of just going out and flying in the practice area for a while.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And the other thing that you can ask for, talk to Approach and say, hey, how's traffic over at Intercontinental? What's the chances of doing a touch and go over there? And if traffic permitting, they'll let you do that. I know when COVID first hit and the air traffic was down to not much at all, they were very receptive to allowing little airplanes go over there and do a touch and go. I never did it, but probably most of the CFIs around here.
You've landed there before, we haven't.
Yeah, I have, but I still think it'd be cool to take my little airplane over there and do a touch and go on a 26 right or the far north runway, which is kind of out of the way of everything else. But they will certainly let you do that, traffic permitting, and the guys in the tower over in Intercontinental kind of like it. They think it's kind of cool to have a 172 doing a touch and go.
Last set of missions we'll talk about are some of the donation things that you can do, whether it be Pilot for Patients, Pilots for Paws, Angel Flight, those sorts of things. They're probably going to help you on your taxes a little bit. You get to donate some of your time. You may have to have a little bit more time than a private pilot to be able to participate in some of those. But we challenge you to at least reach out to Pilots for Patients, some local organizations, and try and find a way to donate. If that doesn't work for you, I guarantee you someone needs something. There's probably not a person or a business or a group that's without need today, and you could probably help them. Most recently, we donated some flight time to our air traffic controller friends to take some supplies to Louisiana after they had a big hurricane last year. And I think that Cessna was overloaded with boxes. It was chips and things, so it wasn't heavy, but that Cessna was crowded full of goodies for those guys and girls. And I think that I would bet you could offer that to just about anybody. And there's somebody who needs something taken somewhere in a greater good capacity that, if nothing else, would make you feel a little bit better about yourself and donating your time and your aircraft for sure. With that, go out as soon as you can and fly some missions with your family and friends. Take an approach of accomplishing something, not just going out and practicing. It will make you a better pilot. As always, fly safe and stay behind the prop.
Thanks for checking out the Behind the Prop podcast. Be sure to click subscribe and check us out online at BehindTheProp.com. Behind the Prop is recorded in Houston, Texas. Creator and host is Bobby Doss. Co-host is Wally Mulhern. The show is for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to replace actual flight instruction. Thanks for listening, and remember, fly safe.